Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think one of these days I should have some theme music. I feel like going in to any kind of a show, whether it's a reading or it's commentary or it's, anything of a political nature, going in without good head music is intro music is kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like going into sex without foreplay. Pardon the analogy, but there you go. It's like, you ready now? Let's go. So good to see you here, folks. Lewis, good to see you. TT, good to see you. You got a notification tonight, TT. That's a good thing. James Sheets, good to see you, brother. Good to communicate with you a little earlier. And who all we got here? Becky, I see you're up there. And a few other folks that are not in the chat room. I want to thank you for being here. I am doing a little bit of commentary tonight because I'm not going to make it to the show with Rocky later tonight. And by the way, right after this show, I might not be right after because I may not go for 2 hours. It's now 9:01 Central Standard Time, which is 10:01 Eastern Time, and 7:01. Is that Pacific Time? Yeah, Left Coast Time. And so I'm doing this little show because I can't be with Rocky tonight. And we have a great guest on, a good friend of mine, Sarah Soderlin. We've referenced her, talked about her before, Paranormal Sarah. And it kills me that I cannot be there tonight, but I've got reasons I can't be in there. And so go and enjoy that after this show. It's at 11 p.m. Central Standard Time, midnight East Coast Time, 2 hours from now. So there we go. And Professor Bauer, how you doing? And let's see, what do you get when you're on meds and the radio at the same time? This is what you get right here, brother. I am actually not drowsy and too dopey at the moment. I will share with you all before I get into the little talking about what we want to talk about today. I did have some good dental work done today that needed doing. And I'm not a big fan of the dentist. But about 12 years ago, and I can date this because it's when my wife and I, prior to us being married in early 2007, flew to Washington, D.C. to meet my publisher and my agent out there. And so we were out in D.C. in 2007, and something with the pressure in the cabin cracked one of my molars up on top that I'd had a filling in when I was a little kid. And now it was just a crack. I just felt it just kind of went, and I went, what the hell was that? And it so turned out it was a crack in there and an old filling. And I didn't give it no never mind. I did not want to mess with it. Not my thing at all whatsoever, going to the dentist. So I let it sit. Then it cracked the tooth in front of it. And because it was all misplaced in there. So then the teeth broke. And then I had 2 root canals and 2 teeth over here from fillings that, if you're anything like me, and you had fillings, I know Professor Bauer is kind of my age. I had a bunch of fillings in my teeth in the late 60s, early 70s, as I was coming of age. And all those fillings were problems, had root canals in them and on. Bottom line, I had to have 4 teeth pulled today. And 2 here and 2 here on the top, both of them. And they've been a problem, a nemesis to me over the last few years. And just in the last year, especially, a big pain in the ass. So finally had them pulled, going to have some replacements put in there, stuff like that. So I was a little, I was talking like this a little earlier because I was numb from about right here up. It had my eyelids were even numb. I was like this half the day. And Puffy and I thought, when I put up the notice for tonight, it was wishful thinking that I was going, and I was also under the influence. So there you go. You drank your fluoride in school in 1976, TT. Yep, there it is. Hey, Lola, good to see you. Jeannie, good to see you. Lewis, if I didn't say hello earlier, good to see you. Donna, nice to see you too. And of course, Professor Bauer, good to have you in here, brother. And so there's the lineup for today. Today was not a rough day. It was just a medicated day. I didn't feel a thing when they did it. As a matter of fact, I didn't even feel him pull these two. I didn't even know he went to that side of my mouth. And I was awake. They put sunglasses on you, and I got my hands in my hoodie pocket, down in the front. And I just threw an ear. Hang on. And so I don't get too nervous about this stuff when I'm in the middle of it. And I have a pretty high threshold for pain, but I definitely needed the shots. They were working hard. I saw him straining, trying to get that tooth out over on this side. So I was a little puffy and a little drugged up for a little bit this afternoon. He said, take some of these Oxy right away when you get home before you start feeling the pain. So I took some, and Oxy always puts me to sleep. So I slept for most of the afternoon, and I woke up. It's a little sore, but you know what? I'm fine. I'm just glad it's not like it used to be a long time ago, where you had to go in the chair and they took the big pliers and had their foot on your chin pulling a tooth out of your head. I don't know what hangs onto the tooth. It's not in the bone. It's just the gum. But you can knock that tooth and crack it and half of it'll fall out. Go figure. So I did that today. Yeah, dribble. I was dribbling this afternoon or this morning, James. And suction and all of that stuff. So I feel all right now. Just feel like I got a little headache on the side of my face, but who hasn't had one of those that you can't work through? And so I think I got most of the technical stuff out of the way. And for those of you who don't know, yes, my YouTube live stream does have a name. If you've seen on the site, on the channel itself, it's Adventure Town Communique. And it's supposed to be to really be in honor of all of the stuff I like to do, the things I like. It's like I said when starting to publish Intrepid magazine and doing the Paradigm Symposiums and writing the books I do and doing the radio I do. I say this is all the stuff I love to do. And the moment this stuff becomes not fun anymore, I'll move on to something else. And so I do enjoy doing this. As far as the Paradigm Symposium, when I did that, after 5 years, it became grueling just trying to raise money all the time, trying to get the doors open, trying to make things work right, fighting politics out there, that it started to become unfun. The days of the event were fun, but the next 10 months afterwards were a pain in the ass trying to get that. So I finally just said, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. So that's kind of the way I govern things. Is it exciting to do? Does it move me forward? Does it give something to somebody else? I'm not super altruistic. I'm not like everything I do is for you. There's a certain point where it is, because this is a broadcast for you to listen to. The books I write are for you to read. The pictures I draw are for you to look at. All the stuff I do is for somebody else. But when I say I'm not altruistic, I mean, yeah, I want to make a living too. And so there is that drive behind it. And when it becomes just merely trying to get by making a living off of something, even though it benefits others, but it's just become a pain, and it's doing a backstroke when you're supposed to be I don't know, running. So those two things don't go together, obviously. But that's when it's no longer fun. So I like doing things because they're fun to do and they mean something. There's something to pass on to other people, something you can enjoy. Hopefully, if all the gods are in your favor and all the stars align, something you can take and appropriate personally, and it means something to you. So that's what I'm all about. And hey, Jason, good to see you. Nice to have you in here. So what I wanted to really talk about a little bit tonight, I want to get into reading again soon, but remember, I only have a finite number of books. I can read my own books and then I'm done. I'm out of books. So I've got The Rollicking Adventures of Tam O'Hare, not starting that tonight, but sometime in the near future, I want to get to that. But tonight, I want to, after that long preamble of about 10, 11 minutes, I want to get into talking about some things that are on my mind. And I never really want this, what I do here, to become a politically driven show. I want it to be a topic driven show, topic events. These are things I always did, always talked about. And tonight, it's going to involve a little bit of politics. So you're all going to have to put up with that if you don't like it. If you like that, fantastic, because I'm going to dig into it a little bit about certain things. But if you don't like it, stick with it here. See what you think. I like to present my view on political ideology, my view on current events. But that doesn't always mean it's going to align with yours. But hopefully we can discuss things here in the chat room, and you can put your 2 cents in worth in. And I can't say I'll always be spot on and see everything that's said there, but I'm going to do my damnedest to get there. And my politics don't always represent, how would I say this? They don't taint my view of ancient history. They don't taint my view of the paranormal, of ufology, things like that. If you'll notice, like Rocky and I have talked about many times, when you start mixing the paranormal and the ufological and the cryptozoological and all those weird things in with people who are known conservatives tend to go, what just happened? This is paradoxical. And it is, because your conservatives tend to not talk about this stuff as openly as, say, other mindsets. But I do. We do. I know Professor Bauer is on the same page. If not, his, I can't even remember what he calls this thing, Confucius Ingomatica. Oh, Informatica, whatever. He's got it, and he'll put it in there. Hey, Amanda, good to see you. Elizabeth, nice to see you. And so here we go. There's some things, and I was really impressed by an article I saw, and I'm going to make some reference to that, but it was by Daniel Greenfield. He's with the Shillman Journalism Fellow. He's a Shillman Journalism Fellow at the Freedom Center. He's a New York writer, and he does a lot of focusing on Islam. But this article is not about Islam. But I want you to hear this, because I'm not just going to read the article outright. I'm going to comment. I want to relay some information that he put across here. And this is something I know Rocky and I talk about, Bauer and Rocky and I talk about. We all talk about to a certain extent. And I don't know what your political ideology is, folks, all of you on a personal level. But I want you to take this as it's given and think about it, and let's discuss it if you want to. A civil war has begun in this country. We've been talking about this for a while. Things are changing in this country, and there's a civil war that's going on already, and it's a very different kind of a civil war than the last one our nation experienced. And there's no cannons, there's no cavalry charges. The left doesn't even want to secede. But you see where I'm going with this? I said the left. There's my Freudian slip. The left doesn't want to secede from the Union like they did in the South 150 years ago. Here is my premise. The left doesn't want compromise. They don't want to secede. The left wants to rule. Now, let me qualify my statements here, and I want you to see where I'm going. The political conflict becomes civil war when one side refuses to accept the existing authority. The left has rejected all forms of authority that it doesn't control. Have you noticed that? That's something, this is where I'm going with this, is that what it seems to me to be happening, and I've seen this in milder forms, but since the current sitting president, Donald Trump, was elected into office, it seems that the left has been more and more and more wanting to refuse the authority that is in place in this country. Everything from not wanting to accept the constitutionally elected president to wanting to now wipe out the constitutionally established electoral college. And we'll talk about that another time. If you don't know what the electoral college is about, Don't say, oh, it needs to just be eradicated because it's not fair. It is fair. And there's a reason that was set in place. So you start to see, it sounds like your family, says Suze. Yeah, this is all of this stuff is starting to go on in this country. And the problem is that the left has rejected our Constitution so long ago that it hardly bears mentioning. And folks, they've rejected the outcome of the last two presidential elections won by Republicans. The left has rejected judicial authority of the Supreme Court when its decisions don't accord with the left's agenda. It rejects the legislative authority of Congress when it's not dominated by the left. And this is a problem. And I know some of you are not United States citizens, but you're close neighbors. We have some of you up in Canada, some of you down in Australia. I know that Australia, you view our politics. So hopefully the principles I'm going to be talking about here are pertinent to you and relevant, even though it's not your country per se we're talking about. But it was for the left, by the way, if I go on with this, was for a total unilateral executive authority under the last president, President Obama. If he had an executive order that he wanted to put out, the left was all for establishing and abiding by the executive authority under President Obama. And now it's for states unilaterally deciding what laws they're going to follow. You see that now. Now they're all for the states only if they want to follow that particular law. As long as the law involves defying immigration laws under Trump, not following them under Obama. It was the sacrosanct authority of the Senate when it held the majority. Then the left decried the Senate as outmoded institution when the Republicans took it over. So they used to hold the authority of the Senate when they held the majority. Oh, it's the Senate has ruled this. This is the legislative answer. Now it's not when the Republicans are the majority in the Senate. Now, it was for Obama. Now, of course, some of this stuff is just political game playing. There's a lot of posts where people want to argue with me or get into it with me about politics from a different or a leftist political agenda. And I just keep putting hashtag political game playing. That's all it is. It starts to be, and you start to, if you step back from it, you start to see it and you notice it. Even those of you who are from Australia, from England, from Canada, from other countries that listen in here, in your own countries, you can start to tell when the political game is being played as opposed to real life, true, honest resistance, as the title of tonight's show said. When do you resist the resistance? And so we're going to be getting at. And it was for Obama. The left was all for Obama defying the orders of federal judges, no matter how well grounded in existing law. And it's for the federal judges overriding any order by Trump on any grounds whatsoever. It was for Obama penalizing the whistleblowers, but now undermining the government from within has become patriotic. So you can tell by the last 2 years of nonsensical hearings that are going on, there's nothing new being found out. And by the way, folks, the fact that they called out, the Senate committee called out Howard Dean to testify, and Howard Dean is all about how obstructionist Trump is and all this. I say B is in B, S is in S. It's showboating. Howard Dean has no relevance in what's currently going on with the president. Howard Dean went to prison because he was he broke federal law, lied to Congress. Howard Dean is not the example they want. They just bring him in to showboat. So the federal judges are overriding any order by Trump on any grounds whatsoever. And now when Obama's penalized, or when it was Obama who was penalizing the whistleblowers, but now undermining the government from within, is the patriotic thing. There's no form of legal authority that the left in this country accepts as a permanent institution. You get that? No form of legal authority that the left will accept as a permanent institution. It only utilizes forms of authority selectively when it can control them. Now, you might say, well, the right does the same thing. No, it doesn't. That's the difference. The right doesn't do that. But when government officials refuse the orders of the duly elected government because their allegiance is to an ideology whose agenda is in conflict with the president and Congress, that's not activism. Protest, politics, or civil disobedience, that's treason. When your allegiance is to an ideology, I'm repeating this, whose agenda is in conflict with the president and the Congress, whose agenda is in conflict with the Constitution, whose agenda is in opposition to anybody who disagrees with them, that's not activism, protest, politics, or civil disobedience. It's outright treason. Now, I'm not throwing that word out there, the T word out there, lightly. Treason is a big word. It's a big thing to level at somebody, a big charge. Treason, as you know, in this country, in some cases, holds the death penalty, and it all depends on when it's practiced and what it's doing. But treason is a huge offense, and so to charge somebody with treason, as Trump has been charged with treason, I hear people who don't even know what the issues are. They can't talk beyond the 3 words that are the parroted words they get as talking points from the left. They couldn't work themselves out of a wet paper bag when it comes to describing what they're saying when they use certain phrases. It's these people who will repeat the word treason. Trump's a traitor. Trump's a Russian operative. Trump's this, that, blah, 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 bitty, blah. I'm going to tell you something that more often than not these days, when I'm discussing some of these things with people in an open forum on the social media, I've gotten more often than not to saying, show me your facts that back up the statement you just made. And it could be as simple as, let's just use that example. We heard for 2 years, Trump colluded with Russia. And people are still saying that today, by the way. Well, he colluded with Russia, no matter what the Mueller report said. And I will say, could you show us who are talking with you? I said, in all due respect, I would love to see your facts and your evidence. If you have facts and evidence in hand to make that claim, share them with us. Even in light, give us a couple of bullet points. That's all I need. You don't have to go through a dissertation with me. Give me a couple of points. And you know what invariably always happens? Those people don't have a single shred of fact or evidence in hand. They are repeating the mobilization orders, so to speak, that have come from the left, who is all about not abiding by the authority of the Constitution, but by abiding by its own political ideology. Nadler, I just saw Jeannie write Nadler, what a putz face. I'm sorry, Nadler's a fucking idiot. There, I said it. I used the Effenheimer and everything. Do you know why I think he's an idiot and why I can say that? I'll bet you I could sit down across a table from Nadler and debate this issue and call him on what he's doing, and he would not be able to win his debate, for lack of a better way to put it. So Nadler needs to step down. What he has done, it's been done. It's done. It's proven wrong. Stop already. You're done. And it makes him look like a fool. Now, all right. After losing Congress, this is a couple years ago now, after losing Congress, when they did, the left consolidated its authority in the White House. All right. That was under Obama. Now, after losing the White House, then the left shifted its center of authority to federal judges and unelected government officials. Each defeat led the radicalized Democrats to relocate from more democratic to less democratic institutions. You notice who makes the biggest caterwaul about, oh, democracy. President Trump we're going to lose democracy under him. Yet what are they doing? Each time they lose a governing body, so to speak, first the Congress, and then they shifted to, okay, well, it's not the Congress anymore, it's the president now because it's our president, Obama. Then they lost the White House in the last election. So they've now shifted to using federal judges that are appointed, not elected to office. Since when is democracy best represented by appointees? Now, yes, they are appointed by the people we have duly elected. But what happens when the duly elected person appoints people you don't like because they're outside your realm of political ideology? Oh, you start activism. You start resistance. The resistance group, we're against. Why are they resisting? Because they don't like who got elected. That's what it comes down to. And this isn't just hypocrisy. This is a very common political sin. And those of you who don't live in the United States, you've seen it in your own governments, I'm sure. Hypocrites maneuver within the system from inside, working themselves out. And the left in this country, has no allegiance to the system and the way it's supposed to work. It accepts no laws other than those that are dictated by its own ideology. And this is where you start getting feelings over facts and symbolism over substance, because they're no longer using the rule books. They're no longer using the Constitution. They're no longer using the duly elected bodies. They are ruling by, what would you call it? Ruling by ideological fiat is how they would love to rule. That is an eradication of democracy, folks. And of course, lest you all don't know this already, it's only been repeated a billion times in the last 10 years and over by Rocky and I. The United States is not, capital N, capital O, capital T, not a democracy. We have democracy. We are a constitutionally limited representative republic. That means we are a representative form of government, and our representatives run the country. And this is what you got with the Electoral College, too, by the way. We'll get into that another time. Richie says this is a worldwide issue. It's been underground for thousands of years. Look deep, Scotty. The source is ancient. You are absolutely right, Richie. And this is a whole series of, I know Jeff has done some things on this. There's a whole series of broadcasts we could do just on that topic alone. And yes, Professor Bauer, mob rule. Absolutely. You know, I was just watching something on a history show today. Not the History Channel. It was a show called Timeline. I catch it on YouTube. And there have been such great guys as Tony Robinson. If you've seen him, he played Baldric in the old, if you remember this far back, the old Black Adder series with Rowan Atkinson. He played the kind of fool, idiot sidekick to the Black Adder. Well, he is a well-known archaeologist and historian. And he has a bunch of series out there that are watching. And I was watching something that this series had done on, let's see, what was the exact show I was watching on this? Now, I was giving so much background, I kind of slipped on what the topic was of that show in my head. There was something that I wanted to make reference to. Well, I'm going to skip it until it comes into my head again. But the left has no allegiance to the system is kind of where I left off on this. It accepts no laws other than those that are dictated by ideology. The Democrats have become radicalized by the left. That's who they are anymore. The Democratic party has become radicalized. I know I was talking about our democratic system. I was talking about us being a duly elected representative government and the Electoral College and all of this. And there's something about that history show popped in my mind and I lost it. I'm trying to jog my memory on that again. It was an offhanded thought. So if it comes back, it'll come back. If it doesn't, it doesn't. This doesn't mean that they all pursue all sorts of bad policies, the left in this country. It just means that their first and foremost allegiance is to their own ideology, not the Constitution, not our country, not our system of government. All of those are only to be used as vehicles for their ideology. And that's why compromise nowadays, especially as you're looking at us from the outside or from within, compromise has become absolutely impossible because they are not for compromise. They are not for recognizing constitutional law because it falls outside their ideology. How many times have I seen people say that they they want to rule by their feelings? I have people I was talking to just this last week on, I wasn't even talking about the gun issue per se, but I mentioned guns and the Second Amendment. And a relative of mine said, "Oh, you're so mad because, about the gun issue. There are more people killed by guns in this country than," and I know in Australia, especially, I have some friends out there that have said, from their point of view, it seems like the United States is the Wild West. And the problem is, and I mentioned this, is that we are a land of laws. We have so many laws on the books regarding guns and the ownership of guns. But what you cannot overlook is this, and I think this is different for my friends in Australia and Great Britain and other countries. The difference here is that our Constitution doesn't give us rights. Our Constitution guarantees the protection of our rights. And one of the rights that is stated is in the Second Amendment that says that you have the right as a citizen to own and bear arms. It's a right. It's not a privilege. It's not a voted thing. It's a right. It cannot be taken away. The only way it can be taken away is if we if we amend the Constitution to eliminate that protected right. And so I say, when there you have mass shooters out there, the focus should never, ever, ever, ever be on eradicating the right of a citizen to own arms. The focus should be on what are we doing about the idiot, nutcase, psychopathic killer that is out killing children with his guns. And why has that, what's the word I'm looking for? Not populated. Why has that proliferated itself? It seems there's more and more and more of this. Why is that happening? I believe it's because we give it attention, because we allow it to grow. But the truth is that, and I'm sorry, it sounds cliche to some people, you take away the rights of the good citizen to own their gun, and the only people that are going to have them are the bad guys. Maybe you see that in the countries where you don't have that as a constitutional right that is protected. Who's got the guns most of the time? The bad guys. And you'll have that here. So this is not supposed to be a talk about the Second Amendment, so I'm going to move on. So our system of government here in the United States was designed to allow different groups to negotiate their differences. As I heard it put once by one wag a long time ago, legislative gridlock is good. Gridlock is good. Why is gridlock good in government? Because the more the opposing parties are stuck legislating or discussing how to legislate something and bringing up their differences, it really comes down to this. It's the longer you get to keep your money in your pocket. And I'm being a little flippant with that. But gridlock is good. The government that moves slowly is the government that moves best. Unless, of course, you're talking national emergencies and things of that nature. I don't think, by the way, Do not misinterpret my words here. I'm going to say this right now. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying or misconstrue it when I say this. The mass killings in this country, the number of people killed by guns in mass shootings in this country are a veritable 0.000 dot blip on the radar of percentage point of the total population. I don't mean that to disarm the notion that it needs to be ended, no pun intended. I don't mean to diminish the deaths and the pain and the suffering that has been caused by these idiots and these murderers. But I am saying, while it sounds like a lot because the news is constantly promulgating it, it is not as big an issue as they like it to sound. It's a big issue, but it's a very small issue on the grand scheme of things. So there you go. More people are killed in auto accidents than by guns. That's very true. Yet we still don't illegalize cars because people are killed by cars. And I know it's a silly comparison to make. It's a frivolous or a fallacious equivalency. It's a false equivalency. I get that. But if we're going to legislate away a right because people are being killed by people who abuse that right, driving a car is not a right. It's a privilege. You have to earn that privilege in this country. You have to qualify for that privilege. So if people are killing people with cars, which happens all the time, should that person be disallowed from driving and suffer the punishments for what he's done? Or should all people driving cars have to give up their cars? That's the equivalency I'm making. So let's move on. Our system of government was designed to allow groups to have and negotiate their differences. The most profound of these shared interests was that of a common country based around certain civilizational values. And the left has replaced these founding ideas with radically different notions and principles. It's rejected the primary importance of the country. And as a result, it shares little in way of interests or values. So the left is not sharing values. It's not even debating its values. It's telling you, if you don't come to our side, we're going to find a way to override you. We will either remove the electoral college we'll get states to vote away, the electoral college. Oh, and folks, for those of you who don't live in this country, and maybe for some of those of you who don't understand this at this point yet, our states are independent states under the federal umbrella. That's why you see states like Georgia being able to make its own abortion law, or to what state was it? Alabama, that just have chemical castration of rapists now. And I don't know any of the details behind all of that, but those states can make that law. The only way the federal government can overtake a state's law is when it is something that's it's something that's put in place by the federal government for the entire good of the country, something that's different. And I'm not getting into it, so I'm giving you a light explanation of what that is. Federal law, thou shalt not murder. Okay. That law of not murdering somebody, a state can't say, oh, murder's legal in our county or our state, and go against federal law on that. So there are differences. There are some things they can't, but the states are allowed to govern themselves. This was the big argument with Obamacare and the health care, was that the federal government was never meant to impose health care over the nation and impose penalties and taxes if you refuse to use it. That's not the place of the federal government. That is under the purview of the states. And some people will say, well, yeah, they voted for it in Wisconsin, but I live in Minnesota and they don't have it here. And it's like, that's your choice then. You are free to move to Wisconsin where they have the laws that you like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sorry. Government isn't there to appease your every move in life. It's there to give you the atmosphere to which to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All right. If it considers them at all, the left, these values of the country, it's convinced that they'll shortly disappear and be replaced by compliant immigrants and college indoctrinated leftists who are going to form this permanent demographic majority for its agenda. But it couldn't wait that long because it's animated by the conviction that enforcing its ideas, the left, enforcing its ideas is urgent and it's inevitable and it's the stuff of the heart. And so it turned what had been hidden translation into an open break. And in the hidden transition, its authority figures have hijacked the law and every political office they held to pursue their ideological agenda. And the left has used its vast cultural powers to manufacture a consensus that was slowly transitioning the country from American values to its values and agendas of the left. You get that? The left has used its cultural power. Come on, what do you feel? Feel with us. Kumbaya with us. To manufacture a consensus that was slowly transitioning the country from American values to the left's own values and agendas. The right had proven largely impotent in the face of a program which corrupted and subverted from within. And the left has this enormously successful track record in this regard. It was so successful that it lost all sense of proportion and decided to be open about its views and to launch a political power struggle after losing the last election. And the Democrats were no longer being slowly injected with this leftist ideology. Instead, the left openly took over and demanded allegiances to do these things. Listen to this, folks. To open borders, to identify politics and environmental fanaticism. The exodus of voters wiped out the Democrats across much of what the left deemed flyover country. And the left responded to Democrat defeats by retreating even deeper into undemocratic institutions, whether it was the bureaucracy or the corporate media, while doubling down on its political radicalism. It's now openly defying the outcome of a national election by using a coalition of bureaucrats, corporations, unelected officials, celebrities, and reporters that are based out of its culture and political enclaves. I think I will vomit the next time I hear somebody like a De Niro or who was it that just did it? Bryan Cranston, who got up at the Tonys the other night and said something about the condition of our country. But he was I can't remember exactly what he said now. If you look it up, and he was an anti-Trump message again, and it was. The left is so engaged, and has been for the last 2 years, in denying the legitimacy of the Trump presidency, that it has left the confines of our form of government, our constitutional law, and has gone into trying to usurp constitutional law with feelings and political correctness. Therefore, I always say hashtag facts over feelings, hashtag substance over symbolism, and hashtag facts don't care about your feelings. It's not about feelings when it comes to running a government. The government has to have compassion. Those are the individuals within the government. But the government rules and laws need to be almost free of emotional input. They have to be common sense. They have to be facts. They have to work It's like that favorite quote of mine. I got to look it up here to quote it from John Adams. It's in my email. I've got it at the end of every one of my emails for the last 10 years. Facts are stubborn things, and whatever may be our wishes, our inclinations, or the dictates of our passion, they cannot alter the state of facts and evidence. John Adams said that. And that's what I'm talking about right now, is that facts cannot be eradicated by emotions. Our laws cannot be eradicated by emotions. So we need to go to the Dem rallies and plant truth by stealth. Well, there it is, Lewis. And, that's something that if we use a tactic of theirs, that's something you engage in. Hang on a second. I got to take a drink of coffee. I am not supposed to swish drinks around in my mouth. I'm supposed to be very careful of hard foods. I'm not supposed to smoke. I'm not supposed to do this, not supposed to do that because of the big holes in the top of my mouth now. They've got to kind of heal over a bit for a couple of days. So I think the coffee's okay, though. I could take another sip. Richie says, let go of the pole. The left and right are just different sides of the same pole. I don't know exactly what your point is there, Richie, but I would agree to a certain extent. However, me being somebody who has been fairly conservative middle of the roader, meaning I like to be open, I like to hear what the other side has to say, I have seen the left attempting to undo the Constitution, where I've seen the right trying to uphold it. If that's two sides of the same pole, if that's what you're getting at, then I would agree with that. And yeah, Sue's dry sockets can be painful. I know what that's about too, from my old wisdom teeth days. So, yeah, it's a pain, but there it is. Now, the left has responded to a lost election, the presidential election, by constructing sanctuary cities and states, thereby turning a cultural and ideological secession into a legal secession. But while secessionists want to be left alone, authoritarians want everyone to follow their laws. The left is an authoritarian movement, and it wants total compliance with its dictates, with severe punishments for those who disobey that. And by disobey, I mean, we're talking a little bit of hello. Symbolism. A little bit of symbolism. I was trying to say symbolic and symbolism at the same time. The left describes its own actions as principled and above board. But more accurately, they're not principled and above board. They're ideological. Ideological. You don't have to be principled to be ideological. And officials at various levels of government have rejected the authority of the President of the United States. They've rejected the authority of the Congress. They've rejected the authority of the Constitution, because those are at odds with their radical ideology. Judges have cloaked this rejection in law. How many times have we seen, the 9th District or whatever, the 12th District, all these, that issue, they've got a single judge who will take something that the president has mandated or a law that's been passed and say it's unconstitutional, and they put it on hold. One person with a political ideology representing a group of ideologues is able to stop the elected powers in the executive branch and the legislative branch. The judicial is supposed to be to interpret law, not to make law. And we've heard that before too. And mayors and governors aren't even pretending that their actions are even lawful anymore. And the choices of this current civil war we are in, which is not one again of guns and cannons and swords and bloodshed. But the civil war we're in is painfully clear. We can have a system of government that's based around the Constitution with democratically elected representatives, or we can have one that's based on the ideological principles of the left, in which all laws and processes, including elections and the Constitution, are fig leaves for enforcing social justice. But you know what? You can't have both at the same time. They do not work together. So some civil wars happen when a political conflict can't be resolved at the political level. The really bad ones happen when an irresolvable political conflict combines with an irresolvable cultural conflict. Cultural. And this is what we have right now. We've got political conflict, ideological conflict, cultural conflict. We got so many people who want us to legislate by feelings. That's the way we feel about an issue, as opposed to by law, which is what's needed in common sense. The left in this country has made it abundantly clear that it's not going to accept the lawful authority of our system of government. Look at the last 2 years of hearings to try to attempt to delegitimize the election of the President of the United States. They will not accept the lawful authority of our system of government. It's become very clear. It's not going to accept the outcome of elections. It will not accept these things because they're at odds with its ideology and because they represent the will of large portions of the country whom they despise. You realize that? And the question, Hillary Clinton, the despicables, or deplorables, I'm sorry, they called us. If you're a conservative, you're deplorable. I don't know how many idiots, that's a word that I was going to incorporate into my next sentence. I don't know how many people I've seen in social media try to dismiss the right as idiots, as people who can't think for themselves, and so on and so forth. And I've been in some of those conversations. I try not to get in too deep. I just mostly say, show me your facts and evidence. Hashtag, facts don't care about your fucking feelings. So, the question about all of this is what comes next. The last time around, growing tensions began to explode in these violent confrontations between extremists on both sides. These extremists were lauded by these moderates who mainstreamed their views. The first Republican president was elected and rejected. The political tensions led to conflict and then civil war. The left doesn't believe in secession. It's an authoritarian political movement that has lost democratic authority. That's all they've lost. It's a temporary loss of democratic authority, by the way, unless they keep getting voted out of office. There's now a political power struggle underway between the democratically elected officials and the undemocratic machinery of government, aided by a handful of judges and local elected officials. How do you feel about that in your country? Those of you from other countries, how would you feel if your elected officials couldn't make the decisions, couldn't do the legislating, but suddenly an appointed judge has the ability to change all the laws? This is a problem. Excuse me. We are feeders, according to those folks. You're right, Lola Joy. Ron says, I'm a straight white guy. I'm automatically the enemy. And that is what it's become. I hate to say that. I hate to stereotype even further, but look at me. I'm a straight white guy. I was told by somebody in my family I love very much, well, you're just an old white guy from Wisconsin. And so therefore, the unspoken therefore was, therefore, your opinion doesn't matter because you are not on the cusp. You're not on the cultural cusp of our nation. You don't have your finger on the pulse because you're an old white guy from Wisconsin. Is that the way we are supposed to look at political ideology, political expression, democratic elections? It really has become that, and I hate to say it, the white male has become anathema in our political system. And there's no reason for it. I'm just a guy like everybody else. Madam Mumbler, yeah. Pelosi has got to be voted out. I really think she should. What if you have a sweet tan? Asks Amanda. Well, Amanda, you have a sweet tan, so that works. There you go. You're in office. Boom. Let's go. Let's do what Amanda says. She has a sweet tan. John Cynical. It all relies on belief, money, religion, politics, science, courts. I think I see a trend, and you do see a trend. I'm still the white enemy to half of mine, Amanda, says Suze. And, I see what you were saying. By the way, I just noticed myself in my camera. I don't have much of a tan right now. I did last summer when I was down in Texas for a month and soaking up the sun every day, working poolside. But right now I'm abysmally fish belly white. Except for I just noticed this. I was looking, something bit me last night. Look at this. This is an aside, but look at here. Here. There's two of them. There's one on my eyebrow that hurts like hell. One here, and it's all through my scalp, like there and there. Something bit my face all up last night, and they hurt. That was actually 2 nights ago, and they still hurt. So I don't know if I got spiders or what I got that bit me up, but I just noticed that. So my red skin as a result of spider bites or something does not count as a good tan, I guess. Yeah, spiders, not the ticks. The ticks usually hang on. So anyway, moving on from that little bit of mundanity. So what this really means now, all of this stuff, folks, is that there are two competing governments in this country. There's the legal government and a treasonous anti-government of the left. Yeah, I said it. The anti-government that is treasonous is the government of the left. If this political conflict progresses, agencies and individuals at every level of government are going to be asked to demonstrate their allegiances to these two competing governments. And that can swiftly and explosively transform into an actual state of civil war. Do you realize that countries and peoples have gone to war for a hell of a lot less than what's going on in the United States right now? I'm not a naysayer, a doomsayer, or anything like that. Everything can be turned around. But right now, when a political ideology is trying to push itself over the governing laws of the land, the governing bodies, the elected bodies, the constitution of the country, when they try to push that as more relevant than the laws of the land, you have treason in the making. No simpler way to say that. And there's no sign that the left in this country even understands or is troubled by the implications of this conflict, that it's initiated all on its own. And there are few signs that Democrats properly understand the dangerous road that the radical left is drawing them toward. The left assumes that the winners of a Democratic election will back down rather than stand on their authority. And it's unprepared for the possibility that democracy won't die in the darkness. And civil wars end when one side is forced to accept the authorities of the other. The left expects everyone to accept its ideological authority. You accept this, or you are on the wrong side of history. You are on the wrong side of this issue. I've had more people say to me, I'm not going to discuss this with you anymore. I'm out because I can't discuss this with you because you just don't see it our way. And it's like, I don't need to be convinced that it's your way. You can dialogue with me, you can debate with me, but also don't leave the conversation if you can't accept that there is another side to what you're seeing. And your political ideology does not trump my Constitution. I'm sorry. Thanks for playing. Next. And conservatives expect the left expect the left to accept constitutional authority. I, as a conservative and a constitutionalist, expect every other ideology in this nation to accept the authority of the United States Constitution. It's not a maybe thing. It's not an optional thing on a answerable test, multiple choice answer. It's not. It's the authority. And the conflict, and you know what? If you want to change the Constitution, then you need to find 2/3 of the Congress that's willing to stand with you, and you need to go through the grueling process of ratifying that with the states. It's the founders made the Constitution very difficult, but not impossible, to redefine. Look at the things that were added, things like women's suffrage, the vote for women. You know why that won? Because it was easier than you think. It's because people believed it was right. Why are guns allowed? It's a right. Why is the Constitution protected? Because we knew that was right. So the things that have been added to the Constitution by way of amendment were ratified through this process because they were the right things to do. And I got to tell you, I've been conservative, and I was once a Christian conservative. Why did the marriage amendment fail? I don't even know if it made it all the way up there. But why did it go nowhere? Because the Constitution shouldn't tell us who and when and how long we're going to marry somebody. That's not a constitutional right that should be protected by the Constitution. That's an individual choice. Leave that up to the state's laws, not to the Constitution of the United States. And sorry, I didn't turn off my phone, so it's beeping at me here. I'm going to turn my ringer off. The conflict is still political, and it's cultural. Conservatives expect the left to accept constitutional authority, and I expect every citizen in this country to accept constitutional authority. And you know what? If you don't like your Constitution and you don't like your country, you can fucking leave, is what it comes down to. You don't have to be here. Go somewhere else where you think you have it better. Don't try to change my Constitution. So the conflict is still political. It's cultural. It's being fought in the media, within the government. But if neither side backs down, then it's going to go beyond words, as both sides are going to give contradictory orders. The left, folks, the left is I'm going to say it, and if you're on the left, you can debate this with me. We can dialogue about it. I don't hate you personally, but I'm going to tell you, the left is a treasonous movement. And the Democrats become a treasonous organization when they fell under the sway of a movement that rejects our system of government. If the left continues to raise its political ideology above the constitutionality of the law, of the constitutional run of our country, then you know what's going to happen? You're going to have a problem in this country, these two trains coming to each other from different ends of the track. You either want to change our system of government, you want to rip up the Constitution, or you can go somewhere else. We don't need that here. Now, their treason is coming to a head. They're engaged in a struggle for power. This is the left I'm talking about, against the government. And that's not protest. Engaging in a struggle for power against the constitutionally mandated government is not protest, folks. Protest is when you pull out your sign, you go out and you protest, and you make your voice be heard. Wanting to undo the government that exists is not a protest. It's not activism. The old treason of the 60s has come of age. A civil war has indeed begun in this country. And this is a primal conflict between a totalitarian system and a democratic system. It's the outcome will determine whether we will be a free nation or a nation of slaves to somebody's political ideology. This is the problem. This is the war that's going on in the nation right now. This is where we are. Political ideology. It's okay to have political ideology. I have political ideology. Trump has political ideology. Obama has political ideology. Anybody who pays attention has a political ideology. Many of those may all coalesce under one or two or three general ones. Political ideology isn't the problem until you want to elevate your political ideology to overtake your Constitution. Then there's a problem. And the Constitution was never meant, and I see it now, folks, and forgive me, I don't mean to offend anybody who's younger than I am, but when I look at the youth in this nation, I'm talking about responsible adult aged youth in our nation. And they're like this most of the time, they're like, all the time they're doing this, and they're on their thing and their tablets and their, and they're doing this when they're talking to you. They're doing this, everything. That mentality, that fleeting of the moment mentality, that's, I need it now in a soundbite. I need it now online. I can respond that way. That loss of traditional, if you will, traditional is a bad word because I'm not going for traditional versus non-traditional. I'm going for the idea of looking for the spontaneous reaction, the spontaneous result. The what can I change today? Oh, I need to change the color of my background. Let's do that. Change the color of my background. Done. That's not how the Constitution works, but that's how they would like it to work. And they are so swayed by the media, who is really working, most of them, in that politically ideological camp on the left, presenting a treasonous point of view, because they think they can take this document right here, the Constitution, and change it. Oh, let's change. I want a different color Constitution. Why is it always on old parchment? Can't we put it on, blue with like butterfly background on it? Things like that. That's not the way it works, folks. And hi, Robin. Nice to see you, by the way. I didn't say hi to you earlier. And if I've missed anybody, James Sheets, I think I said hi to you earlier. So, excuse me. I've been having this dry cough for a couple of weeks now, and it's even worse now. I don't like it. All my kids have it too. I wanted to read something to you. And I've done this before in the past. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But this is a document that you should all be, if you live in this country, should be fairly familiar with. And yes, Jeannie, the Electoral College is being broken due to their loss. And people want to do away with it. I can guarantee you the moment that they won by virtue of the Electoral College, they'd want to keep it. So it's so transparent. That's the problem. It's like, get over it, guys. This is the way it works. And it could work in your favor one day. And by the way, the basic design behind the Electoral College is so that places like, you may know this, but for those of you who don't, places like California with huge urban centers like Los Angeles and San Francisco and New York and New York City, that places like that their votes in an urban location cannot completely overwhelm the rural vote or places where there is no urban center. And so the Electoral College exists to represent everybody. Remember, we are a constitutionally limited representative republic. We're not a democracy. We are not a one-man, one-vote system. So if we lose the Electoral College in California and New York, will determine the election. Boom, Ron Frisbee, spot on. That's exactly what will happen. And I'm not saying this is a doomsayer, but do you want, here in the United States, do you want elections, all elections, determined by Los Angeles and New York City? That's what's going to happen. So here, I'm going to read something to you now. And I want you to listen close to this. In Congress, July 4th, 1776. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Notice there, by the way, let me interject because many people miss this. We're endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Constitution was never written to guarantee your happiness. It's written to guarantee that our country allows you the atmosphere to pursue your happiness. And that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are most disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, these people, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyrant over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. And then they go through and they list all their articles of why they established this. And so then it ends with this. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other things and acts which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor. Boom! That right there is the Declaration of the United States. Declaration of Independence. Boy, I mixed that up with the Constitution of the United States. Let's see, confusing, but all Americans, but different laws. Yeah. What's happening in California? Why so many wacky laws? That's because it's California. They're pretty much driven by the left, I'm sorry to say. Hit the like button everywhere, folks. I agree. Thank you, Ron. And that's really what I came here to say tonight. I had a couple of things lined up I wanted to talk about, but this really kind of took over everything I wanted to say. I have become intolerant of the intolerance of the left. And I hate that this just becomes a right versus left thing because I'm not a rightist. I'm not a right winger, so to speak. I'm fairly middle of the road with conservative values. I've always said it this way. I say, I am a small c conservative with a libertarian bent. I'm a constitutionalist in its original intent. So I'm a constitutional originalist. In other words, without all the mumbo jumbo and wacky trying to change it to mean something other than what it means. So I'm a constitutional originalist, and which therefore makes me pretty much something like a Jeffersonian liberal. So if you want to look up, I'll even do it here right now. I'll tell you what a Jeffersonian liberal is. Thomas Jefferson falls within the assemblage of the greatest liberals of all time, believe it or not. For Jefferson, democracy was power of the peoples. Jefferson pressed that the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. It is its natural manure. To Jefferson, protecting the natural rights and the power of individuals was the primary purpose of government. Protecting the natural rights and the power of the individual is the primary purpose of government. So this is what a Jeffersonian liberal is to me. And you can look up what are the values of Jeffersonian liberalism. Here, matter of fact, I'm going to go grab this right now. Let's see. Jeffersonian democracy is a term used for the political ideals of Thomas Jefferson, the third U.S. president, and his followers from the 1790s until the presidency of Andrew Jackson in the 1830s. Jefferson advocated a political system that favored public education, free voting, free press, limited government, and agrarian democracy, and shied away from aristocratic rule. Although these were his personal beliefs, his presidency often veered from these values, as many do. So, and you can go on and you can read what Jeffersonian liberal is. So I'm roughly a Jeffersonian liberal. Professor Bauer, I'm a traditionalist who feels like the only liberal in a room full of conservatives and the only conservative in a room full of liberals. Ain't that the truth? I get that feeling sometimes. I have found on that same vein, Professor Bauer, over the years, as I've gotten into debates and discussions and things, I have left my original faith. But I find that when somebody out there is knocking it, is coming down on it, is belittling it. I'm not talking dissecting it and examining it. I'm talking somebody that's knocking it for the sake of knocking it. I defend it. And when I'm in a circle where people are, but the Bible says, I find that I am against that as well. So I have this dichotomous nature in myself because I'm so middle of the road and traditionalist, if you will. And also liberal in some senses. And Jeannie Griffin in 1975, I registered as an independent, grew up in a Republican house. My grandparents were Democrats, JFK voters. I've mentioned this here before. I grew up in a family of, we were in Minnesota, so we were Minnesota DFL, Democrat Farm Labor. And my mom voted for guys like Hubert Humphrey, did not vote for Nixon, voted for Jimmy Carter, voted for who ran against Reagan? Mondale in 1980. And I was the conservative in my house. So as I was growing up. So let's see. I'm looking back just to see if there's anything big and pertinent. Our Constitution was drafted by remarkable people, says Richie. It is a remarkable document. We need to protect it and die for it if needed. We've been blessed to live under its protection. And Professor Bauer followed up, the intolerance of those calling for tolerance is intolerable. Damn straight. And James Sheets totally understands. Can't really watch the news and makes you crazy, doesn't it, though? And so, folks, there it is. It's 10:20. I said I was going to come on for about 20 minutes to a half hour tonight. It's been an hour and 20 minutes. Thank you for sticking with me. Thanks for being here. I don't know what we'll talk about tomorrow, but we'll figure that out tomorrow. Keep Tam O'Hare in the back of your heads. One of these days, we're going to launch into that. And be here for Rocky's show. I wish I was going to be here tonight because it's a dear friend of mine, Sarah Soderlin, is going to be on the show with Rocky tonight. I wanted to be there for that, and I can't. I just can't. And reasons I can't explain, but I can't be there tonight. And so be there with bells on, like it, and support it. And wish I could be there. And let's see, Patriots Corner. How do I get a shirt? Shirts you can get over at my Etsy page. As a matter of fact, I'll type them in here. Oh, you know what? You go to Streaming Talk Radio. Just go to streamingtalkradio.com. That's Rocky's site that he set up for the Rocky Stucci show. It's got all our stuff is listed in there. The Etsy page is in there. You can go to that. You can see my website, which there's a link to it over there, but just in case, ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's all of my stuff. And you can go to etsy.com/shop/son of a patriot. There you go. So there's the 3 links for tonight. So go over, pick up a shirt. I got some great shirts over there. If you like the stuff, you've seen the Son of the Patriot shirt I've worn. I don't have this one up on there yet. Gonna get that one back up on there. Got other stuff. Just go take a look. If you haven't looked yet, go browse through the shirts and the hoodies and the stuff that we've made available. All my designs, by the way. It's all stuff I designed. So you can go over there and take a peek. Go look at my website. You can see what I do, all my stuff. Go to Streaming Talk Radio. Go over and listen to Rocky's show tonight. Like this broadcast down below and share it. I appreciate it. And I appreciate your being here. And I will see you again tomorrow night. I don't have a pithy saying for the end other than I like to say, you know what? The more shit I know, the more I know I don't know shit. And so this is just coming from me to you. If you've got shit to add to the shit pile, add it in. And we'll get all our shit coagulated, our feces coagulated, and hopefully we'll be all a help to each other. So thanks for being here. See you next time.